And we're back with MMHC. Good to be here. We took a little bit of a break because I had a couple of vacations planned. I went to Minnesota and I saw Blink 182 at the Target Center in Minneapolis, which was awesome.
Nice.
So Eddie, like, what was the best thing that happened over our little break, our
I
summer
was just
break?
summer break's over. Wake up. You got to set your alarm. We're going back to school.
I have so
uh,
many so many patients coming in being like, "Oh man, my sleep
yes.
patterns are really screwing me right now. It's going to bed at 4 a.m. and now I got to get up for school."
One of my coworkers told me that her kids have been going to. She's like, oh, they're going to be hurting. Going to sleep every night at 1 o'clock, waking up after 11. They're in for a rude awakening.
Oh yeah.
But let's see. Best part of summer break. I went home twice, just for like
Nice.
family things, for a graduation party, my goddaughter's quinceañera. The weekend before my last weekend of summer, friend's wedding in LA. Shout out to Eric and Kristen. Beautiful wedding down in LA area. Got to see a lot of my high school friends. Got to stay in an Airbnb with a lot of them. Just very nice weekend to see everybody and just kind of like it's really cool to think about that after what are we going on year 13 of graduating high school, just
Whoa.
a friend group from high school and just getting to see each other. And it's just one of those things where you don't see each other for a while, but it's just like you pick up right where you left off. I saw one of my buddies, he is a resident in Boston, emergency medicine, and I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he ended up riding back from the airport with us to the Airbnb and stuff, and he mentioned the same thing. It's just like never left. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd probably say that's the highlight: family and friend time.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's our main shout out for today, just family and friends. And
Hmm.
agreed. Yeah, when I was in Minnesota, I saw some of my old high school buddies, and it feels so good. It feels so good to
Yeah.
see them and just tell all the same stupid jokes and stories, and make fun of Tom for pooping in a closet once when he was too intoxicated. The
The
norm,
huge.
the usual stuff. Sorry,
Oh
Tom,
yeah.
you will never live that down. You just
Shout out
won't.
Tom.
Yeah, Tommy
Shout out
boy.
shout out to closets.
Yeah, and Colhan shoes, which was the receptacle for the poop.
What the fuck? Okay.
And moving on
Uh,
today we are talking about relationships and love. And when we were writing the episode, we decided that this episode was going to be called "The Power of Love" because we're big Huey Lewis and the News fans, right, Eddie?
I fucking love Hubert, man. Like Hugh Dog is probably top 6 for me.
Oh, totally. He was actually one of my first concerts. He played at Cheyenne Frontier Days, and I saw Huey
Yeah.
Lewis in the News.
Yep. I
Uh,
saw him back in Shoreline Amphitheater, Mountain View, California, summer of '99.
really?
It sounds realistic, right?
I was gonna say you had me going. I was very impressed. Huey
Oh,
Lewis. That's the power of love. Because love has changed a lot, and this generation has changed a lot in terms of love. I know in the past we've mentioned that this generation is actually having less sex than any other
mhm.
generation previously, even though that's like easier to connect on phones, but we're not really connecting much in real life. So we wanted to give you some of the actual stats and facts, how people feel about love and dating, and some of the different topics around dating these days, to give you kind of an idea of what it's really like from two people who are in very committed relationships and have been for years and years.
And I think you bring up a good point of just like it's so easy to connect virtually and via
Yeah.
phone now. I talk with a lot of students, and like one thing that comes up is like, oh, this person added me on Snap and they go to so and so high school, or I met this person on Snapchat over this or Instagram, or they asked for my Instagram. And it's like, how the fuck are you meeting someone that lives 30 minutes away and you're
Yeah.
16?
It's kind of
Like,
weird.
yeah, when I was in high school, if you weren't in my class or if I didn't know you before, like we're not meeting. Or the other thing too, if we want to take it a step further, like a little more specific example, but like sports, like when I remember one time specifically, we had a guy on our football team when I was in high school where people were talking crap about him a little bit on Facebook, but like that was the extent of it. But
Yeah.
now, like people are talking shit in like your DMs, or they're going specifically to like straight to you. You know what I mean? So it's like yeah, things have changed, and like the relationships connection shifting a lot more virtually has definitely been something that we're still, I think, learning a lot about and trying to figure out as we go.
It's a huge cultural shift. Like we've been doing relationships the same way for thousands of years. Then all of a sudden social media comes along and changes it completely.
Yeah.
Dating apps have changed it completely. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today.
Hmm.
And having healthy relationships have been shown to have a positive impact on mental health. I don't think that's
Hmm.
much of a big statement there. It's kind of a no-brainer, but it has been scientifically shown and in multiple studies that yes, good, healthy relationships are good for you and good for your mental health. And
Hmm.
dating has changed so significantly in the past couple of decades, especially with so much dating moving to the online world. So
Hmm.
we're curious about how this is changing those relationships, the way they're forming, if it has any impacts on the relationships in general.
Yeah. I think too that's changed a lot with relationships has been that polyamory or having multiple partners has become more socially accepted. I think of preparation for today, looking at the notes that Justin made for us, just thinking of how like is this a similar thing like we've talked about with something like autism or ADHD, where it's like maybe it's not that it's more common, but it's more that it's more socially accepted. We know what to look out for. Maybe not so much with polyamory as opposed to like autism and ADHD, but just yeah, it's more of like it's known about more, and it's coming out from being hidden more. I think is what I'm trying to say. Like it's just people are more open to like sharing it. It was something that they kind of kept to themselves for a while, and are just more open to sharing it. I think is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And yeah, I don't want to do any name dropping right now, but I did have a friend recently come out and tell me that he's been polyamorous for the past couple of years, and that was kind of surprising to me. I wasn't
Hmm.
expecting it. So I'm glad that he felt comfortable to tell me about that kind of thing, and it helps me
Yeah.
understand that this is something that is affecting the people in my life. And
Hmm.
I think can be a very cool thing. And I have patients telling me all the time that they're polyamorous, especially this young generation. They're more open to those kinds of concepts.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it comes up a decent amount, more than zero, that we have students that'll mention that they are in a polyamorous relationship, or they've used the word thruple before, where there's three of
Yeah.
them, and they at first I thought it was like a joke word, but like I think it's like an actual descriptor. Like people use
uh,
the word, and it's commonly used.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of the nice thing about working with young people is that you get exposed to all sorts of new ideas and all sorts of
Yeah,
words.
the
I
words.
rec- I recently learned about quadrobics the other day. Have you ever heard about this, Eddie?
No. What is that?
So it's apparently doing aerobics, but it's like on all fours, like running around kind of like a four-legged animal.
Yeah.
And like I had a patient that was like super into it. I'm like, hey, if it's getting you exercise, I'm all for it. Like that's great.
That's funny. Uh, with another thing to consider, like with even with the rise of like virtualness, technology being online, loneliness and isolation are on the rise. People are getting their connection with others on their phones, and this creates weak bonds that then increase loneliness. So it's like my internet friend or my friend on Discord. Like they're still your friend, but that connection that you get from like physically being next to somebody is kind of gone. I can say for sure, me, like we as a society, I think start to or have started to love the convenience of staying home more, so we're socializing a lot less. And I know for me, I know it's one of the discussion questions, but yeah, I feel like I kind of want to leave the house less than I used
Yeah.
to.
Me too. And I know I've mentioned it in the past, but there was that one TED talk that I watched that was talking about how a lot of the social interaction in this young generation is on the phone. So they
Yeah.
feel less of a need to actually go out and do things in person. They're not leaving the house as much. They don't feel the need to drive as much because they're not leaving the house as much because they are getting their social connections on their phone. But that
Hmm.
is fundamentally changing the way they interact with their peers and the depth of their connections too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the convenience of staying home too. And when I think about having to like go socialize after work, I dread it. I
Oh.
want to stay home and I want to do absolutely nothing. I don't want to sit on my phone and watch YouTube. But
Oh yeah.
there was a big study from UC Santa Barbara that showed in 2019 45% of people felt that they contributed to society on a daily basis. And in 2022, in the post COVID era, that number fell down to 31%.
UC Santa Barbara, go Gauchos, I think. Is that their mascot?
You know, you would know better than me, I think.
I would, but all right. You say the next point. I'm gonna look it up.
Los Gauchos. So, one of the things we did want to talk about, just to kind of give you an idea of what is a good and healthy relationship, is like, what is a good and healthy relationship? So, we can't talk about relationships in 2024 without discussing the online dating aspect of it.
Mhm.
So, here are some stats and facts about online dating. Then we'll kind of jump into some of those, like what does a good, healthy relationship look like? But according to a Pew Research survey from 2023, so just last year, so relatively recent, 1 in 10 married persons met their significant other online. That's pretty cool,
Yeah,
considering that online dating is a relatively new phenomenon. Most people who use dating apps said their experience was more positive than negative. And that blew my mind because it
yeah,
seems like you talk to anyone about online dating and they're very negative about it, or that's the
yeah,
public perception about online dating.
yeah. I think especially women, they get like the shit end of the stick a lot of the times. You got a bunch of idiots on like those dating apps, like just kind of saying whatever, sending whatever. Yeah, I'd assume that it was more negative than anything.
Yeah,
Uh, to the first stat, I will say this: I've actually been to two weddings in the last 4 years of people who met online. So yeah,
that's kind of cool. It's
yeah,
an interesting way to meet someone. And
hmm
I always found it hard when I was single years and years ago. You never know who's single and who's not. And like I was in a college town and you'd start talking to a girl and girls would immediately be like, I'm in a relationship. Like
yeah,
they would be so kind of rude and upfront about it.
hmm
And so
yeah,
that hurts. But if you could go onto a dating site where two people want to meet, that's kind of a cool place. That's a cool change in society where you don't have to take that risk of getting automatically rejected by someone.
yeah, yeah. It kind of you both kind of know what you're getting into. It's like I don't know if I think they are real. They got to be real. Yeah, I've definitely seen it on like a TV show, but like the speed dating stuff of like you
Yeah.
kind of know what you're getting into, right? Both people are on the same page, and
Hmm.
now it's kind of similar, but like virtually and
Yeah,
online. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
You got to just keep swiping.
yeah.
That was
Some
in
more
Finding
stats and
Nemo,
facts.
right?
Yeah, just keep swiping. Back to more stats and facts. Women are more likely to feel overwhelmed by the amount of messages they receive, while men are more likely to feel insecure about the lack of messages they receive. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much.
Yeah, that one kind of makes
Uh,
sense.
yeah, and then 40% of people on dating apps are looking to casually date, not long-term commitment. Which I think I don't know. I feel neutral about that. Like, yeah, it makes sense. It doesn't. A little surprising. I don't know. I think I feel neutral.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And then overall, the divorce rate in this country is about 42%. And that's actually 86 divorces every hour,
Mm.
which is kind of a lot to think about.
I wish I had a better memory. I feel like I read somewhere or heard something that the divorce rate is like a little skewed. That is not
Hmm.
necessarily like the most accurate representation or something. But obviously, you found some stats. So, do we ever really know? Is there ever really a perfect statistic? Right? We're usually just looking at like a sample. So I don't know. We're
Yeah.
getting too deep.
On our next episode, we will be discussing
Stats.
statistics.
Research methods too. Bring me back,
No,
baby.
that makes
That's
me sweat. I don't like hearing those words.
that's the last math class I took was statistics. So
Wow.
in theory, I should be versed in it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So, back to some tips for how to live a healthy life, have a healthy relationships. And this is according to the Cleveland Clinic. And if I know one thing about healthy relationships, they happen in Cleveland.
That's
So,
right.
empathy and kindness, reliability and commitment, mutual respect for boundaries, those are all important things.
Yeah. The ability to work together as a team, similar values and goals, the ability to communicate in hard times, forgiveness, enjoying each other's company, and then comfort. And what this really makes me think about, and before I say it, I will preface it with this: I've never read the book; I've only heard about them. But like the Gottmans, they're like the go-to people for like couples therapy or relationship therapy,
Oh yeah.
and they talk about things like stonewalling and like what can help in terms of communication and just overall happiness with a relationship.
Yeah. And those are very basic things. It's so easy to be able to read them off and just say, yeah, have empathy and kindness, have good
Yeah,
communication. But
yeah.
boy, does it take a lot of work. And
Mm.
I noticed in my own life, like having a child who's now 17 months old and actually also recently screwed Eddie over in our fantasy football draft order. All right, side
Liam,
note.
man, I thought we had something special. He gave me the 11th pick, and if you're a fantasy footballer, that's not a good pick.
Yeah, and he put both of his parents in the top 5, so he knows what's good for him.
And then the
We
worst part is there's video evidence of him. It just was he did it.
yeah.
He did it on his own.
So for our fantasy football draft order this year, we had ping pong balls, and everyone had their own symbol that represented them. Eddie's was a mustache, of course, because he's got a beautiful mustache. And then we had Liam throw them, and whoever was the farthest got the first pick, and then down the line. And yeah, Eddie got second to last.
Liam just dropped mine. He didn't even cock his arm back. He just let go.
Because he threw it backwards, really. It was
Yeah,
just like,
if
I hate
anything.
you, Eddie. All right, where was I going with this?
uh,
Let me see here. Oh wow, I
your
totally
own
lost it here.
relationship and
Oh
having a
yeah,
child and
thank you, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, having a child has just made things more difficult. There's more
Mhm.
stress. There's uh, more things that you have to do. There's less time with your significant other, and we've really had to learn to resolve conflict in a way that we never really had to before. Learn how
Mhm.
to communicate, how to work together as a team. So that stuff is really useful for any relationship. But man, yeah, for all you parents out there, I
Mhm.
feel you, and it's a lot harder with kids.
I will take your word for it.
Hmm. One of these days, you're going to be a father of many. I have a feeling.
I'm a father of 1,700 right now. Shout out Sherwood High School.
Woo!
uh, well, this probably begs the question: does having social connection actually help with mental health? And according to Rupel et al. 2022, they synthesized data from other studies showing that more social ties correlates with fewer depression symptoms, anxiety, and unhappiness. So, according to one study, yes, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. And then another
Another
study from
study. Oh yeah,
the
good. Yeah,
so another study from the Harvard Business Review in 2021 showed that social networks are shrinking too.
yeah.
On
Hmm.
average, COVID saw a 16% decline in the size of people's social networks. So it's
Yeah,
not just technology, it's also the pandemic. It's a lot of different factors that are shrinking our social networks and our connectedness.
yeah. I also wonder, like, is this just like a natural thing that occurs as an adult, right? Like we get busier, we with work or with children or with like things that we're doing in our own like personal lives. It does get hard to like pick up the phone and like call somebody. It gets hard to text somebody. I People move away. Like our friends, like
Yeah.
you have college where it's like you for the next 4 to however many years, and then maybe grad school after, you live in the proximity of people, right? I saw a TikTok the other day where this person was like, "Yeah, no shit, millennials can't buy a house. Everyone's doing a destination wedding." And then in one of the comments, it was like, "Well, every wedding's a destination wedding when you get older because all your friends move away." So it's just like
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors, and I just wonder how much of those factors are similar to like the generation previously from us. You know what I mean? Like, is this just like a natural thing? And I think I've talked with one of my friends about it too, or our mutual friend Ryan, where it's really hard to communicate with friends, like to just like reach out. And like I've had a ton of times where like, oh, I got to text this person, I want to reach out to them, and then it's like 2 weeks later, I'm like, God damn, where did the last 2 weeks go?
Yeah.
So I wonder how much it's just a similar experience that we all end up having, and how much of it has increased. I'm sure there's been an increase of it from the norm, with COVID in the last few years. But I don't know, just something that's making me think about.
That and the work culture in general has
Yeah.
changed so much of our society to where in the old days people used to stick with the same business, the same company
Hmm.
for their entire lives, their entire careers, so they would stay in the same place. But nowadays people, and the statistics back this up, people are more likely to move for their job, change cities, change places, and
Yeah.
that really disrupts your entire social network. I
Yeah.
know for my parents, they moved from California to Wyoming when I was 11, so they were in their late 40s, early 50s at that time.
Hmm.
And they were telling me that it's just so much harder to make friends when you're older, and it's
Yeah.
harder to build that big social network. And so they still have a ton of really close friends back in California and probably less friends out here just because it's hard to make connections as you get older, especially with a
Yeah.
big move in a completely new area.
Hmm. And then too, like people's priorities change, right? Like if people, you have children, they're busy with that. Like there's just like the social interaction maybe isn't as important anymore for at least a chunk of time, right? Like it, yeah, there's a lot of it that goes into it.
Yeah. And I feel like the natural human reaction, especially with cell phones and the connections online, is to separate yourself a little bit. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to drive to this place. I don't want to go meet these people. I don't want any awkward situations. It's going to be more comfortable to sit in my house and fart around on YouTube for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good for us to push ourselves and put ourselves out there and meet new people. So it's such a weird balance of we have to start being aware of our natural tendencies to want to stay in, even especially with delivery services now, like you don't have to leave your house at all, everything can
Yeah.
come straight to you. But is that really the healthiest thing for us?
Yeah. And two, I mean, the rise of work from home, right? Like that's a huge thing. Like
Yes.
for a lot of people, some of their main relationships are their coworkers, right? So you factor
Yeah.
in that people are changing jobs a lot more often than they were in the past. And then you factor in that there's an increase in jobs that let you work from home and you're on your own for 8 hours a day, however many weeks during the year. I know for me, when I was this over the summer, right, the last couple of months, I'd be pretty much on my own during the day. Kevin would go to work and I would fill my time with whatever. And I went on walks a lot. Like in the morning
Hmm.
I would just go on a walk and I'd go to this neighborhood and walk around. And I don't know, I would just think to my head of like, I'm doing this right now for 2 months. Like I'm just going on my morning walk and listening to a podcast or doing whatever. But I get to go back to work in a couple months and just see my coworkers who are now I consider friends and all of that. And there's people who this is their every day where they they go
Yeah.
on a morning walk and then they sit at home all day, right? So that yeah, I guess that really increases it too.
Yeah. For myself, I've noticed that I do 1 day a week where I work from home. And it's
Mm.
nice to have the balance. I want to be able to go into the office and see
Yeah.
people, make connections, but it's also really nice to just work from home
Oh
and
yeah.
not just
Yeah.
do whatever I want. If I have a free minute, I can get stuff done around the house. I can clean
Hmm.
things up. So yeah, it's all about balance in life.
Yeah.
Speaking of balance, polyamory, because I have had a lot of young patients. It seems like
Hmm.
this is such a popular topic and something that a lot of young people are doing these days. Even not necessarily young people. I think people have probably been doing it for a long time, but it's just now
Hmm.
becoming more socially acceptable. Is polyamory. So the definition of a polyamorous relationship is the practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships with the consent of all
Hmm.
people involved.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just referred to as non-monogamy. Monogamy, I think, if I can pull a definition out of my back of my brain, is the practice of engaging in a singular romantic relationship, uh, probably still with the
But
consent of all the people involved.
not always, not always.
A few different online sources suggest that about 4 to 5% of people consider themselves polyamorous.
Which is pretty high. That's actually
Yeah.
more than I thought it was going to be.
What's 4 to 5? Okay, let's see. 5% of how many people we got in the U.S.? 325 million. That's my guess. I
Yeah,
think that sounds
325,
like
350 million. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, 325 million times 0.05. It's about 16 million people. 16.2 million people consider
Dang.
themselves
So that's a
polyamorous.
decent
Yeah.
amount of people.
Yeah.
And then a few different sources online suggest that about 4 to 5. Shoot, I already said that one. So from the National Science Foundation, about 3 to 5% of mammalian species are monogamous, and there are a
Mm,
lot of bird species that tend to be more monogamous. Um, and so it's a common thing in nature, but it's not a very common thing. And the fact
mhm.
that humans have largely considered themselves monogamous for the past couple hundred years if is it's kind of an interesting and unique thing.
Yeah. I know growing up, the only experience or thing that I had seen, I don't want to say thing. The only, like I said, the
Ejemplo?
only time, let me back up. The only time that I've seen like polyamory, and it really gave it a negative connotation more towards the religion, was like sister wives, right? And like this,
Yeah.
this, not trope, but this like just assumption that if you're Mormon, you have multiple wives, right? And then
Hmm.
getting older, finding out that really that was just one very specific and extreme section of Mormonism. So I'm sure Mormon people have probably been competing against that for years of needing to like educate people of like that's not us, that's just that one guy on TLC, you know. So it's like I feel like that was my only exposure to it growing up
Yes.
was that and just this, connecting it with Mormonism, which I now know is not
Yeah.
accurate.
Because yeah, polygamy and polyamory are very different things for sure. And the polygamy is definitely what the Mormons back in the old days were doing, and still a little bit these days too.
Wait,
Um,
what's the difference? Are
so
these not interchangeable words?
well, polygamy is usually one man, multiple wives, or vice versa, one woman, multiple
Oh, fuck.
men.
Okay. Yeah,
But
yeah,
then polyamory is both people can be in multiple relationships
yeah.
at once.
Okay.
But I mean, that's a good definition and a good
Yeah,
clarification point to have in all of this.
yeah. Damn, the
Yeah.
more you know. Okay. All right.
The more you know.
Shit.
And they sound incredibly similar too.
Yeah, what the fuck? They're off by like 2 letters.
Yes, polygamy. Polygamy.
Polygamy.
There are
Oh,
actually a few celebrities that have come out as polyamorous, and even some that are in committed long-term relationships, which
mhm.
I find interesting, such
Yeah.
as like Willow Smith and Will Smith.
Want to make this not with each other. I guess we have to like say that, right?
Yeah.
Like because Willow's the daughter and Will Smith's the
Yes.
dad. But yes, the same family. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
There's a lot of
Uh,
polyamory in the Smith family.
Yes. Next person is Jake Paul. I don't have positive thoughts about Jake Paul, so there's that.
Hmm.
RuPaul's drag show. Yeah. You ever
Yeah.
see that clip where RuPaul is on God, what's his name? One of the late night talk show hosts, the little one, the little guy, the
Jimmy
smaller guy.
Fallon?
He is he smaller? Is Jimmy Fallon a smaller guy?
Yeah, Fallon and Kimmel are both little guys, I think.
Yeah, one of them. Okay, he was on
Uh-huh.
there and he says something like, "So you're known, or like you're like a drag queen or whatever," and then RuPaul goes, "A drag queen," and then he's just like, the guy's like, "Oh shit," and then RuPaul goes, "I'm the queen of drag," and it's just funny because he he like his life flashed before his eyes of like, "Damn, I'm about to get canceled," and
Exactly.
then
I have seen that one. That one's really
yeah,
funny. And I
yeah.
do love RuPaul's Drag Race.
Who's the whatever late night talk show host? You
That
said
was
it.
Fallon, I believe. Jimmy
Fallon. There we
Fallon.
go.
Yeah, yeah,
Bam.
for sure.
Hmm.
And then speaking of Jake Paul, not RuPaul, but Jake Paul, who do you got in the Jake Paul Tyson fight in
I need
November?
Mike Tyson to kick his ass.
I
That's
need
it,
it
dude.
too.
I
I
have
need it.
nothing else. I'm gonna be completely honest. I need Mike Tyson to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see Iron Mike just put him
Yeah.
on the floor. Why not? You know?
The issue is that Iron Mike is old, so it's
Yeah,
like it's just frustrating because it's like it's not even real sport at this point. It's just Jake Paul boxing washed up guys, except for the one time that he boxed a real boxer and then lost. So
yeah.
yeah.
How many ears will be bitten in the match? That's
I
what I want
hope
to know.
both of them. Like, just bring it back, Mike.
Some other celebrities that have come out as Poly A or Poly, which is some of the shortened
Yeah.
forms of the word, are Elliot Page and also
Mhm.
Shailene Woodley, which was Aaron Rodgers' ex girlfriend.
Ah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a familiar name, but obviously, as you know, I don't know things, so I know celebrity stuff.
Yeah, movie actors are not your strong suit, but you got plenty of other strong suits.
Oh, what is her name? My coworker had me watch the video where she dances. She's trying to get into Juilliard. Um,
Oh, Elizabeth, or no, we're talking Save the Last Dance.
Maybe. Yep.
I think
She
so.
like at the end she like shows up to her, yeah, her Juilliard.
Yeah,
Uh,
Julia Stiles, I believe, was her
Julia
name.
Stiles.
There
Yep.
we
And my
go.
coworker's like, oh, she was like our whatever actress from earlier, and I was like, I don't even know who that is. I saw her on SNL one time. She like redid the dance with one of the with one of the SNL cast members. So
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway,
Moving on to discussion questions. Eddie, do you think you
uh,
could ever be polyamorous?
it's not something that's ever crossed my mind. Yeah, yeah. I think one thing I think that we run into, especially because we work with a younger population, is that I consider us to be pretty open minded, empathetic, supportive clinicians. Right. So whenever a student or a young person, a young teen, a young adult tells us something that is different than the societal norm, I think we're pretty open to be like, yeah, okay, like thanks for sharing that. It's just interesting how much like people just aren't normally like that, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to make this political, but you see that a lot with like different sides of, and maybe even within the right political spectrum. Just because one person's on one side and one person's on the other side, they can still have a very similar reaction to like something like this. So it just makes me think
Hmm.
about how like, you asked the question. For me, it's like that's not something that's ever crossed my mind, and that's my like open-minded kind of answer. You ask that to somebody else and they're like, oh, what the fuck, I would never like kids these days and they're weird shit. And I'm like, okay, all right, whatever, man. Just because it's not something that's part of my life or something I've considered doesn't automatically mean that it's like evil or a bad thing.
Yeah. I was having a good conversation with a friend of mine where
Mhm.
he said, I don't believe that we're past monogamy, that you could just be okay with your significant other being with someone else. I think that's a reasonable
Mhm.
point of view, but I also think that a lot of people are okay with and they want to explore other
Yeah.
relationships and they want the non-committal side of, and I don't want to just say like, oh, people in polyamorous relationships are non-committal. I don't want to say
Mhm.
that. But just being able to explore things and
Yeah.
be able to have multiple relationships going on as you explore things, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I think I've told this story in the past where I was talking to someone who was in a poly relationship and they were like, I just broke up with my boyfriend and it's been really
Mhm.
hard. And I said, well, how are you getting through it? And they said, well, my girlfriend's been really supportive. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah.
that's kind of nice to have
Yeah.
something to fall back on. So you're not just going from complete, full, committed relationship to absolutely nothing, to
Yeah.
actually having some people that you do enjoy spending time with and can help you through those difficult times.
Hmm. And I wonder if it's less of a not even wonder. I think my thought on it is, to me, it seems more of less of a non-committal thing and more of a just it's committal just to different people or multiple
Yeah,
people, right? There's still commitment. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And I've worked with some families that make it work,
hmm,
that do a really good job of taking care of a lot of different kids in the family involved too,
hmm,
and still trying to make everyone feel loved and accepted. So it's kind of cool to see families work it out, and make it work
hmm,
together.
yeah, yeah. Do you have an answer for the question?
In a different life, sure, I could see
Yeah,
myself being polyamorous, but
yeah.
happy with where I am right now, not planning on making any big changes.
Sounds good.
How about, do
Uh,
you feel like you've become less social after the pandemic?
I swear I was just talking about this recently.
Yeah.
I don't want to say this out loud, but I will. I love my job and I love being around the school. I just, clients, whatever. Sometimes I just have such a short fuse with groups of people. Like I just like get like this visceral reaction of like
Yeah.
I don't like people. And I think it has been since the pandemic. Like I just have a really hard time.
Yeah.
Big groups of people I don't find myself wanting to be around anymore. I feel like I was okay with it before. A good example, I think, is like college, grad school. I feel like I went to a lot of local. Portland small venue concerts, whether it was like a reggae concert or the one time we went to like an Millennium concert, right? Like a small, not a huge venue, but just like I think that's one thing too that I really like about Portland has been like the small like music scene of like you can have this like band that you really like or this group, and then they're like not very far away from you, like they're in like a
Yeah.
small venue. And I really enjoyed that. I'm like, oh, this is, we used to say with our friends, like, oh, we got to go to a concert again. Like, man, this shit's so much fun. And now I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I really want to stand around with all these people. I'll do it for sure, but it's like, yeah, I feel like less desire to.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
What about
I
you?
remember when the pandemic first happened, like all of our shows, all of our concerts, all of our flights got canceled. I
Yeah.
remember feeling like there was a weight lifted off of my shoulders and just being like, okay, I can do whatever now. And mostly it was just me and my wife riding our bikes all weekends with our best friends.
Yeah.
So I do think I became less social. I got out of the pattern of pushing myself to go out and do those things, which now I'm starting to think, was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing?
Mm,
Hard to
yeah.
know. I think I need to start pushing myself to get back out there and being more social and getting involved in something that I feel like is important to me and important helps me feel connected to my community.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a shift. I mean, if anything, people might discount it, but I really do think we're still years away from going back to how we kind of were. We're still learning. Our
Yeah.
kids are still learning, right? They're still trying to get through it. So yeah,
Well, let's end it there. Let's
yeah,
do it.
sounds good to me. Before we do end it, I'm gonna say one thing. Two of my cousins gave me shit at our quinceañera that I never shout them out, but I've shouted other people out. I think it was my cousins AC and Moni. I think it was you too. So if you made it this far in the episode, there's your shout out. Don't say I don't love you. But with that, we are so happy to be back. This little summer break was nice, but god damn it, do I love talking with you, Justin, and just hanging
Yeah, it's
out and,
fun.
and getting to talk to our listeners and have a good time with it and cover some cool topics. So with that, what do I usually say? You know where to find us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Make sure to follow, like, listen, subscribe, whatever button is on there on your app. You can also leave us a comment. We'd love to see it on social media at Millennial MHC. That's TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and our website, millennialmhc.com. Thank you for listening. We'll see you guys again in a couple weeks. And make sure to take care of y'all mentals.